Imagine opening a map of Europe, looking at hundreds of tiny countries, and deciding it all looked ridiculous. So you start deleting them. One kingdom, gone. One duchy, merged. One empire that had survived for nearly 1,000 years, erased. You create entirely new countries, punish your enemies by shrinking their borders, reward your allies with kingdoms that didn't exist the day before. It sounds like someone playing a grand strategy game, but this wasn't a game. One man actually did it. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. And for 10 years, Europe became his drawing board. Welcome to the Meridian. Today, we're looking at how one man ignored 1,000 years of history and redesigned an entire continent. When people think of Napoleon, they think of battles, cannons, marching armies, Waterloo, but that isn't what changed Europe forever. His greatest weapon wasn't his army, it was a map. Because every victory gave Napoleon permission to erase borders that people had accepted for centuries and replace them with his own. To understand why Napoleon wanted to redraw Europe, you first have to see the map he inherited. Today, Germany is one country, Italy is one country, but in 1800, neither of them really existed. Central Europe was a chaotic jigsaw puzzle. Hundreds of independent duchies, bishoprics, free cities. Some were so small you could walk across them in a single morning. If you were a merchant traveling just 50 miles, you would cross dozens of internal borders. You had to pay a different tax at every checkpoint, convert your coins into a dozen different currencies, and obey a completely different set of medieval laws every time you crossed a river. All of it sat inside a crumbling relic called the Holy Roman Empire. Despite its impressive name, it wasn't a modern empire at all. It was an aging, dysfunctional collection of over 300 semi-independent states barely held together by ancient tradition. Napoleon looked at this map and saw administrative madness. In December 1805, Napoleon faced the combined forces of Europe's greatest old-world powers, Austria and Russia, at the Battle of Austerlitz. Outnumbered, surrounded, expected to lose, instead, he unleashed a tactical masterpiece, winning one of the most decisive victories in military history. The battle lasted only a single afternoon. Its consequences lasted centuries, because the moment the smoke cleared over Austerlitz, Napoleon didn't just negotiate a peace treaty. He pulled out a blank map, picked up a pen, and began rewriting reality. His first target was that 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire. With a single stroke of his pen, Napoleon abolished it. It ceased to exist. He took those 300 chaotic German states, smashed them together, and consolidated them into just 39 larger territories called the Confederation of the Rhine. Ancient borders vanished overnight. Centuries-old royal families lost their lands. Independent cities were absorbed into giant, manufactured kingdoms. For Napoleon, smaller states were an inefficient waste of space. Larger ones were easier to tax, easier to draft soldiers from, and easier to control directly from Paris. And to make sure these new countries obeyed his pen, he turned the map of Europe into a family business. He drew a border around Holland and made his brother Louis the king. He carved out a new territory called Westphalia and handed it to his brother Jerome. He redrew southern Italy and made his brother-in-law the king of Naples. But his lines weren't just for his family, they were weapons. After crushing Prussia, he stripped away nearly half its territory just to punish them. He took that stolen land and recreated Poland as a brand new state called the Duchy of Warsaw. For millions of Poles, whose country had previously been erased by rival empires, it was a miraculous rebirth. For Russia, it was a terrifying French weapon parked right on their border. Europe wasn't just being conquered, it was being systematically re-engineered. By 1812, Napoleon was the ultimate architect of the continent. Kings ruled only because he signed a paper allowing them to. Borders existed only because he hadn't erased them yet. And along with his new lines came a uniform system. Old feudal systems were demolished, church lands were confiscated, and a modern, streamlined legal system, the Napoleonic Code, was forced upon millions of citizens who didn't even speak French. One man had succeeded in doing what generations of emperors never could. He had shattered the old world and forced an entire continent to accept a modern layout. Then came the fatal mistake, the freezing retreat from Russia, the betrayal of his generals, and finally, the mud of Waterloo. In 1815, the victorious kings of Europe gathered at the Congress of Vienna. They were furious. They were determined to erase every single line Napoleon had ever drawn and return Europe to its original, fragmented state. They restored old dynasties, They shrunk France back to its old borders, but then they looked at Germany. They looked at the 39 neat, consolidated states Napoleon had left behind, and remembered the nightmare of the 300 tiny medieval borders. And they realized something highly uncomfortable. The tyrant was right. They left his German consolidation completely intact. The Holy Roman Empire was never brought back. Napoleon lost his empire. He died in exile on a lonely island. But the world never truly abandoned the map he imagined. The lines he drew planted the seeds of modern nationalism, eventually forcing Germany and Italy to unify into the superpowers we know today. Sometimes, the most permanent victories aren't the ones won with gunpowder. They're the ones won with ink. Because borders aren't permanent features of the earth. Someone had to imagine them, someone had to draw them, and once a single man proves they can be erased, the map changes forever. This is the Meridian. If you want to follow the lines that carved our world, hit subscribe. We'll see you next week.